let's talk about the thought process behind setting up for busking. So, you need to have a whole bunch of effects going, you need to have access to certain things on faders, certain things on buttons. We need to think through what we need where when we're setting up our workflow, right? So for me, I know I'm going to need to separately control the speed of my color, pan, tilt, and dimmer effects. So I have speed masters for those here. And then I have all of my effects tied to those speed masters. One thing I'm definitely going to want to do is tilt my spots and washes out. So I've made these faders do that for me. So this one tilts out the washes, this one tilts out the spots. Then I need group masters so that I can control how bright my fixtures can go. And then of course I need my effects. I've already shown you a little bit how I have my effects laid out with different cues per sequence. And so there's sequences. These ones are all sine waves. And there's different levels of low values. The high values are controlled by my group masters. Then I have like saturation variation effects over here and stuff like that. And you want to think through like what kinds of variation do I need to be able to get enough diverse looks without, wasting precious real estate on things that I'm not going to use very often, right? So let's put together a look here. I'm turning up my spots, my floor pixels. I'm going to turn on some effects. Maybe tilt them out. Move the spots. I'm going to add some pixels, air pixels effects. I'm going to also turn on my spot dimmers. So now I have all the stuff going all at the same time. Like lots of stuff, right? So song's ending, how am I going to bring it down? I have to have my fingers in like 5 places to turn all of these off. Here and 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 here. Like I don't have that many fingers. So what do? Well, my approach was to think through, okay, what things do I need to happen at what time? So the first thing I want to have happen is I definitely want my air spots and floor spots to turn off, or for the dimmer to turn off. So I want them to go to 100% unless I'm turning the fader down, right? I want also for my wash dimmers to stop and for my floor pixels dimmers to stop. And then I don't want any saturation effects to stop at this point, but maybe for my second tier, like the thing that I would want to have happen that would take longer to finish fading, I will want my wash and spots to stop moving, for the color effects to stop. So with all of that in mind, how can I make all of that happen with one press of a button? Because otherwise, like, I'm not just pressing these buttons to turn these off. I would have to hit off and hit all these buttons to turn off all the dimmers. Unless, of course, I'm going to hit them 4 times, right? But that's a lot. So I can turn them off, but I also have to usually move faders and things at the same time. So that's really a lot to keep track of. So instead, I built a macro. And that thought process was important as to what's going to go in the macro. But what's in the macro is just off sequence through if tag stomp dim. Well, that makes it easy because now I go into my sequences and all of the sequences that I want to be affected by this macro, I just tag them with that tag. And so I thought through, okay, I want these ones to be stomped when I press that macro. And then whenever you press that macro, it does obey the fade time on the sequences, which all the sequences are set to follow the executor time. So I'll set my faders maybe to here, and I just move both of these by habit all the time, even though program time doesn't need to. This is just program time. But I set these at about, 3 to 4 seconds. I set it to that level, and then I press my resolve macro. And all of these turned off, and so I get this look. It's kind of big and it opens out, but I can also pull down my spots. Usually I'll do that kind of at the same time depending on what that resolve looks like. Sometimes I want to resolve big and then slowly fade out, so it gives me that flexibility. Then I still have technically my movement happening, which I do want in this case because I want to also be able to use this macro to kind of make everything go big, right? So I have my movement still happening, I have my saturation effects still happening, and I also didn't affect my air pixels, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But since I have these things still going, I created this other macro, which is called full off, So this one's called resolve, this one's called full off. This one off sequence through if tag pan tilt, and off sequence through if tag sat vary. So that's gonna off all of my pan tilt sequences. So that'll be all these and all of my saturation variation sequences. So I'm gonna go ahead and at this point, usually this happens a lot faster, but when we're coming to the close of a song, I'll put this about here, I'll hit my resolve macro, then I'll move it up, and then I'll hit the full off. That way, if we see the fade of the movement, it's not going to happen in 3 seconds because that's going to look bad. So I turn it up, and then that will happen more slowly. And then also it gives the color time to happen more slowly, which just kind of draws out that resolve. So it doesn't stay too big with those saturation effects going, but it does give it a little bit more presence. So it's not just, okay, everything's over right now, because that's kind of awkward. And so, I mean, depending on the situation, sometimes I'll hit both of these at the same time, but as a general rule, I want a more slower fade. Sometimes I even want the saturations to stay on entirely. And then I don't mess with the dimmers on the air pixels. If I have my air pixels dimming, they stay dimming. And here's why. Because if I just have my pixels on all the way, I'm gonna set them on all the way. If I stop them to stay here, for one thing, that would actually be complicated because the fact that I'm not always using the same set of pixels on these bars, but let's say I stomp them. Now I bring my fader down because I'm like, okay, well, we kind of resolved big, but now I need to fade them out. That's pretty abrupt. And my washes are really bright right now, but that's like a really abrupt change. Like, okay, now the pixel bars are off. Whereas if I have them running these effects or whatever they're doing, like it doesn't need to change from whatever it was, whatever they were doing when I was ready to resolve, I just kind of fade it out. It's a lot more gradual. It looks better. And then if they're ringing out, it kind of allows there to be some movement also on the way out. So we've got the big with the spots and the washes, but we've also got some like for those cymbals. So we've got that going on, and I fade these out at will. And that I find looks a lot better for my resolve. So that's kind of how I thought through what to have. And then everything's down, we're in the low part of the song. I can come over here and turn these off at my leisure, right? And that's also kind of a thing I'll do if I want to leave my saturation going, but I want to turn off my position effects. I'll just resolve and then not do the full off, turn this up, turn these off, and let these ones keep going and go on with that. So it's super flexible having these macros, but just what you need to think about is, what do I need to happen at this point in time? And I love using tags for this because it makes it really easy to go change it. If you find that something's not working, you just unassign a tag from one thing and assign it to another thing.